Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com, your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing the relatively short-lived 2015 to 2020 Rolex Oyster Perpetual 34, the 114-200 red grape dial. The timepiece, as you see it, is discontinued. It is lush, lovely, and wonderfully attractive, rarely seen, and a great match for a smaller wrist. At 34 millimeters in diameter and 904L stainless steel, from lug tip to lug tip, it measures 41.8 millimeters. From end link to end link, it measures 43.5 millimeters, and it is only 11.4 millimeters thick with a 19 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and you can see it actually looks quite natural. Rolex Oyster cases, if we're honest, are really more tonneau than round. As a result, they wear a little bit large for their rated size. So this looks more like a 36 on my wrist, and though my wrist is 16 centimeters, I'd have no reservations about wearing this on a daily basis. Taking a quick look at the bracelet, you can see, as with most Oyster Perpetual references, it's fairly basic and understated. We have a conforming end link to meld the bracelet to the case in a natural, seamless fashion. There's a little bit of taper down the links. The tops are satinated, the flanks are polished, and the removable links are fixed in place by screws, and you can see that on both sides of the clasp. We have a clasp with 3 divots drilled internally. You don't get easy link on this generation of the Oyster Perpetual, but you can see that there are divots drilled inside the clasp. I'll show that to my best ability. And using your strap tool, you can move the spring bar and relocate the bracelet inside the clasp to fine-tune the fit. Externally, you can see the clasp is polished on its side, satinated on its top, and it has a little stamped 5-point coronet. There's a lift lock system with a beak, a hook, and a spring-loaded latching. So though it is not a double lock, it is locked. It's not friction fit. You have to lift and unlock it to open it. The case is handsome, simple, and evocative of, well, every Oyster Perpetual since the original in 1933. It was the first modern format Rolex watch, combining the 1926 Oyster screw-down crown water-resistant case with the 1933 Perpetual rotor winding system, hence Oyster Perpetual. Those early examples were called bubble backs because the case backs were extended to fit over the rotor. They almost invariably used some sort of a domed bezel profile, which is what we have right here. So it has a little bit of that bubble back look. Twin lock crown in steel, screw down, 100 meters water resistant. Rolex has its own foundry. It makes its own cases, clasps, and bracelets, and it makes its own steel using 904L steel, which I mentioned earlier in the review of the watch, but what that is specifically is a high nickel content steel that is more corrosion resistant than standard watchmaking 316. It's not harder, but it is more resistant to corrosion, and so you don't need to rinse the watch after exposure to sea salt. The dial is red grape, and you can see red and pink in 2 different lightly contrasting tones, a discontinued dial and a discontinued model, and one with a lot of personality. The hands, crown, and indices are all white gold, so they won't tarnish, fade, or oxidize over time. And you can see the watch has plenty of luminescence. This example still using Super Luminova in green. Taking a quick look at some of the subsidiary functions. Underneath the solid case back, we have Rolex caliber 3130. It has hacking or stop seconds, bidirectional automatic winding, a 48-hour power reserve, pivots on 31 joules, beats away at 8 beats per second. It's a COSC certified Swiss chronometer. It's shock resistant thanks to a full balance bridge and a free sprung balance with micro Stella variable inertia nuts for fine adjustment. And the watch also features an overcoil hairspring made by hand, so in any position with respect to gravity, it keeps very good time. Stop seconds, of course, which we saw just a moment ago. And with the full balance bridge and the free sprung index, the watch is both very hardy in the face of shock and able to be regulated very precisely. And it's well known that even before the advent of the so-called superlative chronometer standard, Rolex would adjust the fully assembled watches to perform better than chronometer standard before they left the factory. Finally, the hairspring is made of a blue oxidized niobium zirconium alloy that is highly anti-magnetic, blue oxidized so it won't corrode. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.